Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinells, and tonight I have a brand new guest. It's been a long time. I didn't really think about this until today, but I've had the same guest basically over and over again for quite a while now. So, or just no guest at all. So I'm very happy to welcome for the first time on the program, Kristofer Jenson. How are you, Chris?
Hey, great to be here. Thanks for having me. Happy to be a new person in the Spooky Ass Shit family. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Now, since you're a new person, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell the people who you are, what you do, briefly. You know.
Sure. So, yeah, thanks. So, I am a film critic living and working in Boston. I started writing for Dig Boston, formerly Weekly Dig. It's the alternative weekly in Boston, and my work's been in a few places, some local magazines like Scout Magazine. I write for Seaville Weekly now in Charlottesville, Virginia. Done some things for Paste Magazine. I did one thing for Newsweek, and only one thing for Newsweek, and I will leave it at that. And I former co-host of Spoiler Piece Theater, so that was a spoiler-friendly podcast. So if I veer into territory, how do we feel about spoilers here?
Yeah, I think especially, so tonight we're talking about movies. That's why part of why Chris is here. But we're going to give you a list of movies you can watch here in your isolation. But I think spoilers are okay, but we might give a warning before we spoil like the ending or something. But
good to know.
But there's one of your choices in particular that I do want to discuss, but I can't discuss it in a meaningful way unless I spoil it. So I'll give the heads up when we get to that one.
Isn't that the way? That's why we started the podcast, was like, hey, the one thing that I really want to tell you is exactly what I can't tell you, so what do? You start a podcast. It's like, hey, the whole thing is a big spoiler warning.
Yeah.
It's in the name.
Definitely. Actually, so the reason I asked Chris to come on is not just that he's a movie guy, although of course he is, obviously, but we met through a mutual friend, and a friend of all of yours too, Emily Ferguson, who you've heard many times and who composed the theme song to this very show. And she has parties every year, and we are at the same parties. And it seems like the past few years anyway, the Festivus party has come to an end with us sitting around the table talking about spooky subjects in general, but movies in particular.
Spooky movies, it's a way of really finding someone else who really appreciates what is good about horror, or maybe not what's good, but what most resonates with me about horror. It's a lot of fun to talk about, and it's really great to find someone who can really tap into that with you.
Yeah, and if anything, I just feel bad for Emily, because then she's eventually got to just kick us out, because we'll just sit there talking the whole time.
We watch the reality shows, so
it's quite a scene.
It's a chaser for the games, yeah.
Quite a scene at the Ferguson household on those late December evenings. All right, so like I said, we are going to be talking about movies that you can watch here in your coronavirus quarantine, and I think the ones on both of our lists are pretty available, right?
I didn't double check two of them.
Okay.
But I'm pretty confident that in some capacity, in some rental platform, some of them you can get on Canopy or YouTube. YouTube, because some of these movies are old enough that they're public domain. Yeah. So you're not breaking any laws there.
Yeah. And mine are, you can rent them or you can find them on, one of the streaming services or something. So these are all things that you can discover at some point. And I want to point out that we are not saying that these are the best movies of all time, or that these are even our favorite movies, or that these are the spookiest movies, or anything like that, or that they're perfectly suited to a quarantine situation necessarily. I figured there's probably a lot of people talking about that, right? And how many times can you have, Dawn of the Dead or Cabin Fever or something like that, like recommended to you, So we tried to think... Or I tried to think a little bit outside the box anyway. I don't know if Chris had that in mind necessarily making his list, but his lists are outside the box as well. So we're just going to go ahead and get into that. But first, I want to remind you all to check out the website. That's spookyasshit.com or spookyas.com. They both take you to the same place, and that is the show's blog page. From there, you can listen to each and every episode, even the ones no longer available on your favorite streaming service. You can also find links to all of our social media. The most important ones are Instagram. We are at spookyasshit on Instagram. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. While you're there, you can join our secret closed group, the Spookaroos, where we can talk in private without the weight of public judgment upon us about our favorite spooky subjects. And I think that's all the plugging. It's been so long since I've done a live plugging. I still remembered it all. That's good. I think I got it all out. All right, let's go ahead and start. And Chris, since you're the guest, I guess I will have you go first, whichever pick you want to start with. Tell us about your movie.
Great, yeah. So I'll go in order of how they appear on my list. And you're right. My thinking was I thought I'd mix it up between ones that people have heard of, have definitely seen, and would never have heard of if they weren't listening to this episode. And so starting off is a movie that is one of my favorite movies, and then nobody ever says this movie's overrated. This is an important movie. It's a beloved movie. It's influential. It's The Exorcist. And the reason I chose The Exorcist is it's not necessarily the movie that scared me the most the first time I saw it than any other movie. There are movies that scare me more the first time I see it, and then when I see it later, it's like, oh, that's good. Like, love The Ring. The second time I saw The Ring, it's like, oh, she crawled TV. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The first time that scared me out of my mind. The second time, like, and that's not a knock against it. It did it effectively. But the thing that makes The Exorcist so special is it gets, I don't know if it's creepier because I'm getting older and some of these things are weighing on me more, or if like I'm just noticing things more, or because I know something's about to happen, there's the level of dread that comes with it. But you know, I first noticed this when there was a group of friends who came over. I lived in your 20s in one of those houses with too many people in it. A bunch of us, it's Halloween. Hey, what movie are we going to watch? Oh, The Exorcist. That's a spooky movie. And the end came at like the first time you see the Captain Howdy face pop up on the screen. Suddenly everyone's silent. Nobody's having fun anymore. I mean, yes, on some level, but nobody's like kidding around.
Yeah.
And then, like, at the end of the party, everyone's like, I'm going to go home. And that stuck with me. And it's like, wow, this is something special. That people in this room have seen this movie before. People knew what to expect. It's so upsetting. And I think it's really special for that. And I like a movie that's honest enough to genuinely upset and not necessarily shock, not necessarily, just like, jump scares have their time and place, but that's not what this is. It's the dread, the the existential fear of what is happening. Did I bring this on myself? And even if I didn't, is the world going to reject me for something that's not my fault? And just these secret unknown horrors of the universe.
Yeah.
Now, in the deep lore of this thing, it's a Babylonian god. It's not Satan. But, like, that sort of doesn't matter because the fears ring true.
Yeah. And I can tell you from a Catholic perspective, the point that it's a Babylonian god, that doesn't matter because any of those gods would have been demons, if not Satan himself, in Catholicism.
Wasn't the Catholic Church really enthusiastic about this movie?
Yeah, well, they thought it would bring people back to the church. I don't know if they were all necessarily enthusiastic, but I did hear that as well. Yeah, that they were like, no, go see it. See what happens if you don't come to church and you aren't a good Catholic.
Yeah, fuck around and find out.
Yeah, I was raised Catholic, so that movie hit me on a level when I first saw it, but I luckily, I think, didn't see it when I was particularly young. I was already in high school by the time I saw it. And we rented it one night, my girlfriend and I, and we brought it back to her house. And her mom was like, oh, what movie did you guys rent? And we were like, oh, The Exorcist. And she flipped out. And she was like, no, you're not watching that here. You can't, I don't even want that tape in the house. Don't even bring it in. And we kind of laughed and we're like, oh, it's funny, like whatever. And she's like, I'm serious. Get out. And so we had to go to my house and watch it. But that's, I mean, she probably saw it when it first came out, my girlfriend's mom, and it speaks to what you're talking about, which is the power it still has over people. That is definitely, that might be my all-time favorite horror movie. It's maybe tough with, I do really like Rosemary's Baby. I think I like Exorcist over Rosemary's Baby, though. A little more action, a little more excitement. I've been on a really...
every time I watch...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, every time I watch The Exorcist, part of me wonders, like, oh my God, are they going to be able to do it? Like, what's going to happen? Even though I literally know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It puts that feeling back in me, like the last exorcism, when the one right before he jumps out the window. That's the one that it's ramping up so much. A part of you believes that it might not work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's obviously a very powerful movie. Longtime listeners will know, of course, of my my enemy being Linda Blair. I have a bit of she's a bit of an enemy of mine. Although I did technically forgive her, so I guess I should stop talking about it. But if you listen to back episodes, you can hear that story. Chris, if you haven't heard it, I'll tell you later. But I don't want to bore everyone here talking about it again. Okay. But yeah, even though she turned out to be not so great to me in real life, I still love that movie, and her performance is good. And yeah, so check out The Exorcist. Anything else you wanted to say about it?
I saw the I forget the name, special edition or whatever it was, and I understand why they did it. If that's the version available to you, the re-release that happened in the 90s, watch that after. It's got some scenes that they cut out, and there's a mystique about deleted scenes, but only watch them after the movie. And so if there's like a special edition that's pieced together from a scene that you didn't see the first time, watch that after. There's this, her walking backwards down the stairs is an amazing moment in terms of, technique, but it happens way too soon. You're still supposed to be on the edge about whether this is actually supernatural or if it's a possession. And then you see that, and then, it gives away too much too soon, and it was the right move to take it out. So make sure you're watching the theatrical release, and then if you're curious and if you're as enthusiastic as I am, watch that version after.
All right, very good. So like you said, a popular movie, but an important one. I'm going to save my popular one. I'll do like a kind of a palate cleanser, because you saw my list. I obviously have one on here that is not exactly an obscure choice.
Yes.
But let's go. Let me see. I'm not going to go in order on mine. Let me talk about The Haunting. Now, there's several versions, but I'm talking about the 1963 The Haunting. So The Haunting is about a scientist, an archaeologist, who wants to run experiments, he calls them, on this house to see if it really is haunted. There's all these murders that have happened there and strange mysteries and everything. So he sends out letters and tries to get volunteers to come and be his research assistants. Only two people show up, two women. It's Theo and Eleanor, who they call Nell in the movie. And then the young man, played by Russ Tamblyn, who will inherit the house after his aunt or whoever dies. And they all go to this spooky old mansion, and of course there's creepy house staff and strange things go bump in the night. That's really the plot of the movie. And then Nell, in particular, is affected by this, and we're left to wonder what's really happening, what's in her head, what is going on in The Haunting. Directed by Robert Weiss, director of West Side Story. And perhaps no coincidence, one of the stars of this movie is Russ Tamblyn, who also starred in West Side Story as Riff. I loved Riff. He was my favorite character growing up from West Side Story, and was super excited to see him in this movie. I knew he was in it, but to be honest with you, I only saw this movie very recently, despite the fact that I grew up loving spooky stuff and spooky movies. Ghost movies have never particularly been my thing. So I guess that's why, like, I heard about it, I wanted to see it, but I never made any like special effort to see it. But it's like $5 to buy on Amazon streaming. So I was like, oh, let me just finally check it out. And it's got good reviews. It's like this. It's a beloved movie and everything for fans of the genre. I have to say, I don't think it struck me the same way as it seems to have, created this kind of cult worship that it has right now. But I did think it was a good movie. It's worth seeing. The one fatal thing for me about this movie, and I shouldn't say fatal because it's not like I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it. But Julie Harris as Eleanor, or Nell, as they end up calling her in the movie, she is clearly not okay from the start. She is a little left of center, as we say in the mental health business. And you know that, like, I understand that that's kind of part of the movie. Like, is this really happening or is she crazy? That's a standard kind of horror trope. But there's just so many times where you just be like, I'm done with this lady. And she's like the lead of the movie. So I don't know. Have you seen this one, Chris?
I watched it after we were messaging it. I watched it for the first time after that. Now, I'd seen the Netflix series, so I was familiar with some ideas, and that kept a lot of the house design the same. But I had not seen this. I'd heard about it. Robert Weiss, obviously amazing, and you see some of the same technician genius on display here, which lends itself both to horror movies and to musicals, to have somebody as in tune to what the camera's perspective is. Like, what's the movie's opinion about what's happening, not just what's happening. Having him, you can see his touch, and I loved it. Even when I wasn't spooked, I was thoroughly entertained. I think I might agree with you a little bit about the lead. Yeah.
Yeah, she was a bit tough. And I was reading some of the trivia on IMDb, and apparently she didn't really put herself out there with her cast members either. And that was probably more of a character thing, but she said she was very depressed during filming and that she purposely didn't hang out with her cast members, even the woman who played Theo, which is a very interesting part of the movie, which we'll talk about that in a second. But that she really didn't like put herself out there, and they would all go out to lunch and she wouldn't go. And kind of now the way they tell it is that, like, oh, she just really wanted to be in character. But I kind of wonder if people are just trying to kind of play nice now, because there's also reports of her like complaining that her castmates didn't take the movie seriously enough, and that they weren't in character, and that they weren't doing like what they need to be doing to make this movie what it needs to be, and that she would like cry in her makeup chair and all that stuff. So obviously I wasn't there long before my time, but I do wonder, what the truth is. Probably somewhere in the middle, as with most things, I suppose.
Right.
But I do love Russ Tamblyn, and I have not yet seen the Netflix series, The Haunting of Hill House, which is based on the same story. But apparently he makes a cameo in it. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
He's Nell's psychiatrist in that show.
Oh.
So I don't know where he fits in or how long he's in it, but apparently he's there. This movie, I was surprised. I had to re-look up when it came out because it's in black and white. And I said, well, but, West Side Story was in full Technicolor, so why is this in black and white? Came out afterwards, But that was a choice, and I think it's a wise choice, a Robert Wise choice.
Yeah.
I didn't even plan that one ahead of time. Just happened that way. But yeah, the black and white movies. I mean, to be honest, the movies that got me into like horror and monster movies, that really made me a fan, were the Universal monster movies that I saw as a kid. On the Sci-Fi Channel's Moonlight Matinee. So just seeing things in black and white, whether it's a spooky movie or not, that puts me in the right kind of mood to be a little spooky anyway. And I think a point that you made, or that you mentioned earlier, it's like, it's not a terrifying movie. A lot of the press from the time and everything is about how terrifying it is, and you won't believe the terror that happens on screen. And I think that has a lot to do with the actress in the lead being terrified the entire movie. But yeah, I wouldn't say like it's an overly scary movie or anything. And like there's not a lot that actually happens to these people, right? Like it's mostly noises and bangs until you see the door breathe, which is a famous moment from the movie.
I had to put my drink down when that happened.
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
Yeah.
A, that it looked so good, and B, the idea of it.
Yeah. That I was prepared for that because that I'd seen before. Like I knew that was a thing from the movie. You're right. It does look pretty awesome. But one thing that I did like about the movie was the lesbian undertone. I want to say undertone, but it wasn't even really an undertone.
Yeah, coding. I think they they sometimes say there is no coding in the Netflix series. I can't speak to the original book. I can't speak to other iterations too. But she doesn't tell her family pretty early on. But each episode in the Netflix series has its own character-centric episodes leading up to when everything comes back together, which is a great way to do it. Things out of order, and it's like, oh, that's the context for that. And her in that show was, I think it was maybe the second character episode. And it's like, I'm sticking through this thing because I want to know what the hell she does. And then later on, so the big picture of the character is fascinating. And then when they introduced her, it's like, oh, I bet that's Theo. And then the sort of the slyness of, I believe that's how she existed in the time of the story, in her place in society, that she is both, she's broadcasting it, but also slightly concealing it based on somebody's reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I just think it's such a cool thing to see in a movie from 1963. Mm-hmm. Like you don't think of those things happening in like major motion pictures, but she's like, even watching it, like my lady and I were watching it together, and like we weren't concentrating on the lesbianism of the movie or anything, but you kind of, once you start watching it, you can't not focus on it either, because it is so blatant. And like there's times where she just like gets a little too close, and she talks about how they're going to be super close, just like sisters. Like she says that like so many times, but she says it like in a weird way, kind of like that too. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, what is going on here? And then she's like this cool, like beatnik type lady. So yeah. And her name's Theo. She's wearing a leather hat. Like you're just like, okay, all right, there's definitely some stuff going on here. And it's not just like people making up their own theories about things. Like this is, and then again, reading backstage information on it, or behind the scenes, I should say. That shows you I'm a theater guy at heart. Stay backstage instead of behind the scenes. But that was definitely intentional. That was part of the character. So again, just a really cool thing to see in a movie from the 60s. All right.
I have two things if we have time.
Yep.
We're not eating up too much tape. So one is that back for the Theo character. One more thing is that as I picked up on it, now obviously I'd seen the Netflix show, so I knew at least in that iteration she was the character. The audience was supposed to explicitly know about her sexuality, that it wasn't concealed. Mm-hmm. Once I picked up like that, the audience is supposed to know is that it wasn't camp also. And there's a movie on your list that I won't reveal that has certain camp elements to it that, like, if you're clued in, you'll say, that's pretty slick what that guy did. Mm-hmm. That guy being a person we're going to name later as a famous horror director. Mm-hmm. But then in this one, she is not camp, which is sort of what I'm used to seeing camp to broadcast, hey, this character is gay, or at least not straight.
They're just so eccentric.
Right. Not a trace of it. Not in her.
No.
She's a fully formed personality that's not... There's no jokes at the expense of the thing that the audience is supposed to know, which is really, really clever and bold, I should say. Like that's the thing that makes it stand out as well. You watch a Hammer horror movie and it's like... there's so much winking, and those are great too, but it's different than that. And black and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and also like it's not salacious either. Like mm-hmm. she's aggressive and everything, but it's not like they're not using it to sell the movie either. Like it's not some exploitation movie where it's like, oh, lesbians on screen,
Right. This isn't what high something or other about the pot thing. What's that called?
Reefer Madness? Is that what you mean?
Reefer Madness, yeah. It's not like depicting something in order to condemn it. It's like it's pretty cool. And also the black and white thing is notable, because he made one of the most vividly color film. Like I think of West Side Story, and one of the things I think of is vivid color and it gorgeous. every frame of that movie is gorgeous, and the way he would use like high and low angles, like the keep it cool boy scene. That's like one of the most like pressure, like keep the pressure down thing, using the camera and staging and all that to do that is an eternally, that's a brilliant scene. And you see some of the same logic at work here. And what I said in my review of The Lighthouse from last year, was the choice to make it black and white. It's black and white, in my opinion. Like it should be whatever the choice of the filmmaker, cinematographer. Like, what is the thing that depicts the mood? What's the thing I'm trying to communicate here, emotionally, narratively?
Yeah.
And it's my feeling that when a film like this that has like an underlying, a boiling sort of emotion to it, when you decide to make it black and white, when you're fully in the color era, it makes the other elements of it pop more. Now, one of the things I noticed was lots of close-ups of almost the entire movie is completely in focus, except for like tight close-ups of Theo. You know, the background behind her is more blurry. I don't know how. I trust Robert Wise did everything on purpose, but it was about halfway through the movie that I noticed that like she looked a little different in her close-ups, and I think something like black and white enhances that. Like, I think you might not notice it if it was color because it'd be all these things coming at you, and it heightens a lot of the you're not taking in the color, so you're taking other elements of the texture or something else that's going on. That like if it was color, it would be just one more sensory thing coming at you.
Yeah.
So it makes part of it pop more.
Now I do have one more comment that I want to make about this movie actually, but it is a spoiler. So if you don't want to hear it, just skip ahead, maybe hit that like fast forward thing like twice and we should be done talking about it. But I love at the end of the movie let me try that again. I love at the end of the movie that it actually is like a supernatural explanation. It's not like some bullshit like, well, her psychiatrist forgot to give her the right pills and she, whatever. Damn Hays.
And it's also not like, it's also not, and here's the secret of how to make friends with the ghosts so they don't haunt anymore. It's like, it's fucking evil. That's an evil ass house. There's evil out there, and this is an epicenter of it. The house wants you. Oh my God, when that woman came out of the thing when they were at the top of the platform, like, whoa, Jesus, like that is the house trying to actually consume a person. It's the scientist too. I mean, we we could keep talking about this movie. He gives a believable, compelling case from a scientist's point of view for why he wants to prove the supernatural. He's not a kook, and there's not a secret agenda here. He's like, here's something I've always been fascinated with. Now, because of that, I had to do this. I had to follow this other course in life. But secretly, I always wanted to prove ghosts. I became an anthropologist because it's like the ghosts of civilizations or whatever he says, which is cool. And, he's an accomplished dude. But he's not a crackpot. He
does not seem overly concerned about the fate of his wife. I will say that. I mean, I know obviously he's supposed to have some kind of thing going on with Nell. I understand. But still, just saying. Yeah,
there's a lot of great unspoken tensions in this movie that probably fit with with what their place in society, all the characters, where they are in the world, they act according to what they do and don't want to broadcast about themselves. And, his tension with his wife and his unspoken but also spoken desire to want to be with Nell. Good stuff. Good stuff.
On to your next pick, sir.
On to my next pick. So there was a thing. So I came of age movie-wise in the 90s when the internet was still young, but there was an IMDb, and there were things to help you facilitate. Here's a database of movies, not just IMDb. There's also like a Leonard Maltin's guide and things like that. Like, so you want to learn about movies, here's all these tools to choose from. And this is about the same time my family subscribed to HBO and stuff, and so you fall asleep watching God knows what movie. Something that always stuck with me was Event Horizon. And I sort of grew up with the memory of that being a movie that people didn't love. And then, lo and behold, you grow up, and everyone also loved. Maybe not everyone loved it, but it had this like it hit people on the same level that it hit me. It's kind of trashy. It's just trashy enough, though. You know, from the director of Mortal Kombat,
Yeah.
Paul W.S. Anderson, and then later the Resident Evil movies, which I think also hit exactly the right note for most audiences. But Event Horizon, you know, so you got this this ship that's sent to. Now it's been a while since. So if I get a detail wrong or two, forgive me, but they go to find out what happened to this. The Lewis and Clark is the name of the ship, commanded by Lawrence Fishburne. And they go to see what happened on the Event Horizon, which was an experimental spaceship experimenting with deep space travel, or like faster than light travel, trying to get the universe space-time to fold in on itself. You know, that classic thing, like you fold a piece of paper in half and you stab through it, to try to travel through space that way. In doing so, they went through hell, in so many words. Picked up some demons. The demons kind of possess people, kind of not. And it's fucking cool. And it's like, I think it was a year after my bar mitzvah too, and so like, and in bar mitzvah, in Torah class at least, we were talking like big picture stuff. What is the history of like, you know, how does God participate in reality according to the various traditions? You know, is there an afterlife? This is not stuff that was in my Torah portion, but it's like, hey, you're going to be a man soon, so let's talk about the shit you're thinking about. That's how my temple did it, at least. And so it comes a year after I'm thinking about all these cosmic things. Like, is there, you know, retribution? Like, is it fair? Does it act according to its own rules, or does it just suck you in and boom, you're you know, servant in hell now? And then this movie comes along, and it's like, oh, it's not up to you. It might just target you and say, you're mine. Your soul belongs to me, and there's nothing you can do about it. And space too. Like the terror of space. Space is the coolest thing to me, narratively, visually, conceptually. It's just out there. It's crazy to me that that there is space. You know, I know this is such a it's such a kid's way of phrasing it, but it's always had that appeal to me. And then, but also it's fucking deadly. Everything in the universe wants humanity, life. Is maybe it's an accident. The universe really wasn't geared to build it, or at least the vast majority of it. Maybe in these little pockets of planets, and who knows where else life exists. But like, it's weird that we're here. And so what else is there on levels we can't see just below the surface, between space? Is there some demon waiting for us to keep us in our place? You know. I love that stuff. It's kooky, but it's the kind of like, it's what I love about horror, that it seizes on an irrational fear, and it mutates it, it exaggerates it. So there's no part of Event Horizon that adds up logically to me, but it taps into the sorts of things that do give me existential dread. And it looks cool, and there's great set design. Great performances from actors who are like, well, I guess Sam Neill in the 90s was doing all kinds of stuff. But, you know, people who like really, really high A-listers, or at least became them. Yeah, just a terrific pedigree, and this like, oh my God, they're really tearing these people apart. Ugh. It's really cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty intense. You know, when they're in hell. Even for a 90s movie. But yeah, I mean, it didn't grab me the same way, but I have a little bit of a bias against space movies, because although I get all the ideas that you're talking about and I feel the same way, I don't know, a lot of times I'm not really so much a sci-fi guy, and I like my horror just regular. I know, considering one of my choices that's coming up, but I don't know. I don't like ghost stories set on plantations or ships, and maybe space too. Maybe space I'm a little hesitant to get into. So I'm not poo-pooing it. I'm just saying, for me personally, I barely remember seeing this movie when it came out. I must have rented it or something. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird how you just have these biases against things. Sometimes you're just like, oh, it's set in space. I'm gonna check out then. Although I did like Jason X, so it's not everything. I did kind of like Jason X.
I like Jason X 10 years after when I saw it. When I saw it, I was like, what the fuck is this? And then 10 years later, it's like, what was wrong with me? This is perfectly fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is very much a, here are my infected wounds, and here's a finger just sticking its business right in my business. Here's what's really troubling me. And it's just like, oh, cool. Let me disturb that disturbed part of you even more.
Yeah. Oh, there's definitely movies that catch you like that, like going all on. I mean, American Werewolf in London is one of the few movies that actually scared me even as a kid. Like I was like, I had a pretty good grasp on like, this is real, this is not real. But American Werewolf in London and Children of the Corn were two movies that tapped in. Like I was honestly afraid of werewolves and transformation in general. Probably some deep psychological reason there. And then like other kids, like bad kids, I was both like terrified of and yet like kind of drawn to as well. So like those are two movies that like they hit me in the right spot, and I'm going to love those two movies forever, no matter what, Although I happen to think they're both great movies. Maybe Children of the Corn isn't as highly as respected as American Werewolf, but
isn't that the great thing about horror is that like it can kind of be bad, but in a way that doesn't matter.
I think about that all the time with these goddamn Star Wars movies, because I see the Star Wars movies and I'm like, why am I still going to this? Like, I don't really enjoy it. I don't like, I don't even have passionate feelings about it, like one way or the other. I'm just like, I think I'm done. I don't think I have to go to any more Star Wars movies, But if they make a new Halloween, if they make a new Friday the 13th, I'm going to go see it. And even if I hate it, I'm going to go see, even though I know that I probably won't like whatever the movie is. Because most of the sequels to any horror movie are pretty bad most of the time. I'm still going to go see it. So I have to give Star Wars fans and Marvel fans their space on that too. Because it's like, you know what? Sometimes if you're the right kind of fan for the right kind of movie, it doesn't matter whether you're going to like it or not. Like, that's not part of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but
you're absolutely right. Allow the room for someone to like get something specific out of it. If you ever encounter someone who's either being dishonest or like, I think that might not be the point of the movie. I ran into this problem with Fight Club a lot. With like, I don't know if it said the thing that we're having the conversation about here.
All right. So anything else about Event Horizon?
Well, everything else about Event Horizon, but
I'm going to give it a rewatch. I didn't fully rewatch it in preparation for the show. I ran out of time because, like I said, I am working like 16-hour days, but I am going to give it a rewatch, and I'll report back and let you guys know if I've come to appreciate it more in my old age.
I would love it. I would love it if you turned out to love it, but I have no investment in your enjoyment of it. You don't have to say, hey, that's nice that you like that. You can fucking hate it, and I get it.
Yeah. Well, different strokes for different folks. It's all right.
Right on.
All right, Chris, for my next pick, you know what? Since we're in space, let's stay in space where no one will hear you scream.
Oh, boy. I know what this is.
Yeah, we're talking about my big blockbuster from my pick, Alien. Now, I just got through telling you I don't really enjoy space movies, and some people would even say that this is not a horror movie, although, again, tonight the idea is not necessarily that we're talking about horror movies. We're talking about spooky movies. This is definitely, to say the least, a spooky movie, and I think most people in the know would say that, like, yes, this is a sci-fi movie, but it's actually a horror movie set in space. Another thing, to be honest, this time I didn't see Alien until like 2 weeks ago. Had never seen it, and I think part of it is, again, just my kind of bias against things set on spaceships. It's not that I automatically hate them or anything, but I'm just not drawn to them. And then the fact that everyone said how great Alien is, and then you go so long without seeing it, and you're just kind of like, why do I don't need to be a fanboy about something else. Like, it's fine, like whatever. I'm sure it's not as great as people crack it up to be, and then I'll see it and it's not good. Alien's pretty fucking good. I guess that's maybe an understatement considering, the world we live in and how much people adore it and everything. But turns out people were right. Alien is the story of a crew of it's a cargo ship traveling through space, and they're just regular folk. These aren't like brilliant scientists or anything. There's a number of just regular folk, and then there is one artificial life form. Is that, I forget. There's a technical term he liked to use. Is that what it was? I forget what it was. But I've only seen it once, and it was just a couple weeks ago. I wasn't taking notes at the time. I didn't know we'd be doing this episode, or otherwise I would have taken notes. And Sigourney Weaver, of course, is the lead female. They get a distress call. They go to this planet to see what's going on there. They find this like ancient crashed spaceship, and they're looking around that. And while they find eggs basically. And one of them hatches, and it lands on this guy's face. These are called face huggers. I mean, you guys have probably seen Alien. I'm probably the only one that hadn't seen it. But anyway, the alien infects the guy, comes on board the spaceship, even though Ripley told him, don't break quarantine. We learn, folks.
Don't break quarantine.
Don't break quarantine, or an alien will come out and eat 5 out of 6 out of you. So
metaphorically.
Yeah. So that's basically the movie. Then it's just her trying to survive this alien, and there's a lot of, hide and seek and that kind of thing. And I really don't have like a ton to say about the movie, except that I'm glad that I finally broke down and watched it. And I feel like I probably don't need to say too much because you guys have probably all seen it. It's a classic. It's a modern classic, right? But yeah, very good movie.
Everything about it holds up.
Yeah, it's as good as they say. I don't even really have a lot of notes about it. I just wanted to point out that I saw Alien finally, and I enjoyed it.
There's a lot of great elements that went into making it. It's not little of it, but like a lot of what appears on screen wasn't really scripted as such. It's such an atmospheric movie. This screenplay obviously matters, but sort of what I've alluded to a few times, that this is a director's genre. When you're dealing with atmosphere, when you're dealing with like, you have the creature design where everything is phallic. Everything is like, everything he's doing is a violation of what you consider like a personal boundary or an issue of personal safety. And like it plants the eggs in your face. How inhuman is that? It's so phenomenally creepy, and even the entries, the Prometheus sequels, I've been mixed on. Prometheus and was it Covenant? Alien Covenant, I think it's called.
I've only watched the first 2 so far, so I'm behind everybody.
Okay. The best parts of that are the ones that tap into that. There's a scene involving like an operate. Oh, geez. Okay. I was about to get into spoiler territory. Anyway, I think if the things you like about this, now the second one is an action movie.
Yeah, that's actually what I said. I mean, I know that kind of stuff is out there now, but that's what I said to my lady as soon as we were done. I was like, I like the first one better because it's it's like more like a horror movie. And this is more like an action movie. I still enjoyed the second one, but
oh yeah, it's great. I would watch Aliens a bunch of times, be perfectly happy. It is its own standalone thing, showing how good James Cameron is. He sticks to the same ideas, but he does them so fucking well that I'll watch anything he does. What else can I say? Well, everything I want to say about Alien is the kind of thing that you've already heard about Alien. It's beautiful, holds up technically, thematically. It's one of these things that got greenlit because of Star Wars, that somebody saw spaceship, hey, make it. And it was so glad that they did. It changed everything. Made Sigourney Weaver a superstar, and she deserved it. And what a hero of that series to have Ripley be,
And I know this is a point that gets made a lot too, but just to put it out there, especially in the times we're seeing now with Captain Marvel and all that kind of stuff. Horror has been doing female leads for a long time, like strong female leads.
All these men don't listen to her. You know, is it Tom Skerritt? Is that who the captain is? He's like the picture of 70s manhood.
Yeah.
You know, he fucking gets it.
Yeah. All the fighting points are still there. They just don't like, you know, it's not like because she's super smart and men are super dumb. Like, you know, it just doesn't beat you over the head with anything is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
But then there's the last scene where she's in her underwear and she's annihilating this phallic beast that just won't leave her alone, that has no goal except to not leave her alone.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't exist for any other purpose than to turn you into one of it or use you as a platform to make more of it. And then she says, fuck you.
Yeah.
And boom, it's gone. You know,
it's all there.
You're right. Narratively, you're absolutely right. And I think thematically it cuts on that level as well.
All right. So that is Alien. Obviously, I'm behind the times in recommending it, but if you haven't checked it out for a long time, or if you're like me and you've never seen it, go ahead and check it out, because maybe you're thinking it's a sci-fi movie and you're a horror person, so you won't be interested. But I think you will. Yeah. So check out Alien.
There are these movies that you know about, that you've heard about, that you feel like, I know it, so you don't see it, so you never get around to seeing. And there's no shame in that. It's a funny time we live in with media, that like you don't get to something until way later, and it's like, oh fuck, people were right. But you know, meanwhile you were over here like exploring this angle, and then you come back around to what the voices were telling you decades ago. Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. You know, better late than never.
And there's a lot of cultural references. Like, obviously I knew about the gut busting alien, like, you know, like you see that parodied in a million things, Baseballs included. And there was a line in the second one that I was able to say as she was saying it, because I knew it from South Park. I didn't know what it was from, but as soon as she said, like, they mostly come at night. Mostly. I was like, yeah. And my girlfriend looked at me. She's like, I thought you hadn't seen this. I was like, I haven't. But yeah, there was a lot of things like that.
Yeah.
Similar line in The Haunting, by the way. The maid is like, nobody comes after night. Nobody comes after dark.
She was the best. Yeah. Wasn't that great? Where she's like, I'm saying this, and I don't fucking care if you listen, but this is what I'm here to do. Yeah. You can all die for all I care, but this is what I would. Breakfast. You guys want breakfast? I'm doing breakfast. I don't care if you're talking about ghosts, you know?
Telling you for the third time, breakfast is at 9:00. Yeah. All right. Apparently, we just need to do a full episode on The Haunting sometime. But, Chris, for this week, we're going to end it right here because we've gone to our time limit already. Like I predicted we might. So, instead of next week putting out, usually I do an old episode. I'll do a new episode and then I'll play an old episode. But next week I'm just going to do part 2 of this episode, which I think is the second time I've done it with a new episode. So you people are lucky. But yeah, so next time we'll be back to finish off our list. But in the meantime, check out the movies we've recommended so far and tell us what you think. Write in to spookyassshit@gmail.com. And that is spooky ass, as in the thing you sit on, ASS shit, not AS. And you can let us know. And, of course, you can reach out on any of the social media platforms I mentioned earlier. Chris, where can people get a hold of you and your stuff?
I've sort of withdrawn from Twitter, but I do have a Twitter account. If you want, search for my name, and you'll see the various places I've written for, and you'll be able to find my email address on those author platforms. I'm working on a site called burritoinamovie.com right now, where I'm sort of exploring a very specific thing that I have pursued in my life, which was, you know, I studied Russian when I was younger, burritos, and then but I'm going to tell you a story in the next episode, because this is going to be a detour. So if you want to hear about the connection of Burrito in a Movie and Soviet cinema, tune into the next episode.
There you go. All right, so get to watching those movies, and until next time, don't